The Young and the Restless spoilers. Next 2 weeks. Spoilers May 12 to May 23, 2025. It had been weeks since Daniel and Tessa first stood together beneath the wisteria-draped archway in the courtyard where Heather's memory still lingered like an echo. And in that time their bond had grown from cautious companionship into something deeper, something that threatened to shatter the fragile equilibrium they'd both fought so hard to achieve. One late afternoon, as the golden light slanted through the tall windows of Daniel's living room, Tessa traced the rim of her teacup with a fingertip, eyes fixed on the dancing reflections in the porcelain. Daniel, sensing her unease, leaned forward. "I'm a little worried about what you might be planning next," he said quietly, and though his voice was gentle, his words carried an urgency that made her heart tighten. She nodded, meeting his gaze with a flicker of determination in her eyes. "We both need a new direction," she replied, voice soft but firm. "Let's figure it out together. We can build an empire." He was silent for a long moment, considering. She had plans as dreams, for a life they could share, one that would honor Heather's memory by giving him reason to smile again, and give Tessa space to write her own story instead of lingering in the margins of someone else's grief. But Daniel knew they were far from ready. "There's so much we each need to do for ourselves first," he said at last, voice low with sincerity. "I need to learn how to stand on my own again without feeling guilty for loving you. And you need to find peace with your own past before you can step fully into this future with me." Her eyes glistened as she absorbed his words, understanding that love alone could not erase their individual struggles. They fell into a companionable silence, each lost in thought, until the late-day sun slipped below the horizon and shadows gathered against the walls. Then, hand in hand, they rose and walked toward the door, knowing that whatever dreams they dared to dream would have to wait until they had forgiven themselves for loving beyond loss. Across town, in the chic yet intimate confines of society, a members-only lounge bathed in muted green velvet and burnt amber light. Billy Abbott sat beside Sally Spectra at a corner table. The clink of ice in his glass punctuated his frustration as he recounted his latest clash with Victor Newman. "He swore he'll use Newman Media to go after me," Billy said, voice low but seething. Sally tilted her head, sympathy softening her features. "I'm sure Adam Newman's right there behind him, leading the charge," she observed quietly, her lips curving in a half-smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Billy snorted bitterly. "Perfect," he muttered. "Just when I thought I'd flattened that rat." She reached out, laying a reassuring hand on his arm. "Maybe we should just ignore them. Any attack they launch will backfire if we stay focused on our own goals." But Billy shook his head, his gaze flickering with a predator's intensity. "Victor offered me a truce, no media war, if I spill everything I know about Dumas's designs on the chancellors." He paused, watching a waiter drift by with a tray of martinis. "He wants the full briefing on that boardroom coup or he's going to unleash his press machine. You know what that means, front-page headlines, smear campaigns, dug-up dirt. It's not just business, it's personal." Sally drew in a slow breath. "Are you willing to give up the whole Dumas exposé just to keep the peace?" Billy's jaw clenched. "The only thing the chancellors represent to me now is a weapon to use against Victor. To see him burn, to watch him lose control, that's worth the risk." He took a long swallow of his drink. Unseen by either of them, Phyllis Summers pressed herself against the paneled wall behind their table, arms crossed as she listened in stunned silence. Cold dread settled in her stomach as Billy outlined the deal with Victor, an agreement that cut to the bone of corporate warfare and personal vendetta alike. She clenched her fists, torn between rushing forward to warn Sally and Billy that their words must go no further, and slipping away before the full force of what she'd heard could sweep her into the maelstrom. Back in Daniel's world, the evening had grown still and the only light came from the flickering fireplace where Tessa sat alone, wrestling with Daniel's warning. She felt the weight of his concern for their emotional readiness pressing down on her. The acknowledgement that two hearts could ache in unison only if each had first learned to heal separately. She had envisioned their empire as a fortress of hope, but now she realized that no empire could be built on unhealed scars. By the time Daniel returned home, tired from bedside confidences with Lucy, the fire was a bed of embers, and Tessa's eyes were rimmed with fatigue. He sank beside her, stilling her hand as she reached for a promise she was not yet ready to give. "We'll take it one step at a time," he said, voice gentle. "Let's start by taking care of ourselves, healing, forgiving, and learning again how to love without the past dragging us down." She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks, and leaned into him, grateful that he understood she needed to find her own footing before they could walk together. Meanwhile, at society, the tension between Billy and Sally hung in the air like smoke. Sally stood, smoothing the crease in her skirt as if to ward off the chill that had settled in her bones. "Then you must decide what's more important, your bid to topple Victor or preserving your integrity as a media man," she said softly. Billy reached for her hand across the table, and for a moment his desperation flickered in his eyes. "I can't let him intimidate me," he replied. "Not when everything I've worked for is on the line." He rose abruptly, pulling on his jacket. Sally followed suit, worry tightening her features. "Please be careful," she implored. "If Victor gets wind that you're willing to betray Dumas's secrets, he'll use every weapon in his arsenal." Billy's hand found hers, strong, pleading. "I know. But I can't back down now. It's my move or theirs." As they turned to leave, Sally felt a prickle at the back of her neck and glanced past Billy's shoulder. There, pressed flush against the paneling, was Phyllis's silhouette. A silent sentinel to their unfolding drama. Phyllis's lips parted in a gasp, and for a heartbeat Sally froze, eyes widening. Then Phyllis slipped away down the corridor, leaving Sally and Billy to step out into the night unaware that their lives and loyalties had just been compromised. In the hush of his home, Daniel stood at the window watching traffic lights flicker across the moonlit street, mind racing with strategies for his own heart's recovery, and for guiding Lucy toward acceptance. He knew their love would survive if he nurtured it patiently, step by careful step. And in the dim glow of the bar across town, Billy and Sally made their way through the crowd, unaware that Phyllis's discovery would soon turn their battle into a three-way war of secrets, alliances, and betrayals. Thus, as the last hour of the night slipped away, three stories, of love reborn but not yet ready, of vendettas cloaked in corporate deals, and of a watching glint in the eye of a cast-aside observer, wove together into a tapestry of anticipation. Each character stood at a crossroads, Daniel and Tessa, pledging to heal before they built, Billy, poised to risk everything for revenge, Sally, torn between loyalty and caution, and Phyllis, armed with knowledge that could shatter alliances and unleash new conflicts. In Genoa City, dawn would bring reckoning, and the choices made in these quiet moments would set the stage for upheavals that none could foresee but all would soon endure. It was late evening when Claire found Kyle in the quiet sanctuary of his penthouse living room, the city lights of Genoa City glittering like distant stars beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. He looked up from the scattered files on the coffee table, blueprints of the Chancellor Industries headquarters, projected profit margins, and a draft of the purchase agreement for Adam's former loft. Despite the weight of corporate strategy in his hands, his expression was pensive, almost haunted. Claire closed the door softly behind her, smoothing the silk of her dress as she approached. "Kyle," she began, her voice low and steady, "if we go to Victor together, if we show him how serious we are about this, about us, he'll see the depth of our commitment." She paused to let the words settle between them, a flicker of hope lighting her eyes. Kyle rubbed the back of his neck, glancing at the shimmering cityscape as though seeking an answer among the skyscrapers. I don't know, Claire," he said finally, voice thick with doubt. "I doubt there's anything we could do to convince him that our love is real." His words, intended as a soft confession, landed heavily, sending Claire's shoulders drooping ever so slightly. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper. "I understand the skepticism, Kyle. But this isn't just about a property deal or corporate alliances. It's about family, Victor's family, our family. Jordan's betrayal cut me deep. I've resented the Newmans for what happened. But through it all, I've secretly admired Victor's integrity, his sense of loyalty above all else. She swallowed, searching his eyes for a glimmer of the faith she still clung to. My grandmother, she thinks we should slow down, take our time with this. She says once Victor sees we're not rushing in, once he understands that we respect his concerns, he'll come around. Kyle's gaze fell to the carpet, his jaw working as he weighed her words. Claire watched the play of emotion across his face, conflict, fear, longing, and knew that her next words would matter more than any boardroom negotiation. Why are you so determined? He asked quietly, finally looking up. Why does Victor's opinion matter so much to you? The question, tender yet probing, hung in the air like a challenge. Claire inhaled slowly, steadying herself. Because he's the pillar of his family, Kyle. He's held everything together when the world wanted to tear them apart. If he can see us as worthy, if he can believe that what Jordan destroyed is being rebuilt with honesty, then it will prove to everyone, including us, that our love can survive anything. She reached out and touched his hand, the soft contact bridging the gulf of his uncertainty. I want a future where we don't have to hide behind corporate facades or whispered rumors. I want us to walk into Victor's office side by side, honest and unafraid. Kyle looked down at their joined hands, the stark contrast of his passport black cuff against her pale wrist a visual reminder of the worlds they straddled. In the dim lamplight, her eyes held a mixture of hope and steely resolve. He could see the outlines of his own convictions mirrored there, the desire for truth, the yearning to belong, the fear of being forever defined by the mistakes of those who came before him. He knew that, in his heart, he wanted to stand beside her, to face Victor's formidable presence and win his respect. Yet the memory of the harsh boardroom stares, the whispers of betrayal that had once seeped through the corporate halls like poison, made him hesitate. Claire sensed his hesitation and drew in a measured breath. If we rush to buy Adam's loft, she continued, voice firm yet compassionate, it will only confirm Victor's worst fears, that we're trying to ambush him. He'll see it as a power play, not a partnership. He'll be convinced we're working against him, and there's no undoing that kind of suspicion. Kyle's brow furrowed as he considered her logic. Sometimes, she said softly, it really does feel like there are three people in this relationship, Victor, you, and me. But that's only because he's the one with the authority to give us the blessing we need. Once he does, the three of us can become two, no longer haunted by the shadow of his doubt. Her words resonated in the quiet room, and for a moment Kyle simply stared at her, the tension in his posture easing. The city lights blazed behind him, indifferent to their personal drama, and yet in that hushed penthouse he felt a subtle shift, an opening where fear had once stood. At last, he nodded, a small movement but one heavy with meaning. All right, he said, voice steady. We'll slow down. We'll do this on our terms, not on Victor's timetable. But we'll do it together. Claire's relief was like dawn breaking after a long night, and she allowed herself a small, genuine smile. As they stood facing each other amid the soft glow of lamp and skyline, they both understood that the path forward would demand patience, courage, and above all, unity. They would show Victor the truth of their commitment not with grand gestures or hasty acquisitions, but with the quiet strength of shared purpose. And in doing so, they would forge a love that no boardroom intrigue or family rivalry could ever shatter. Tessa rounded the corner of the rose-lined path and froze when she saw Mariah slumped on a wrought iron bench beneath the amber glow of a lamplight, shoulders heaving with restrained sobs. For a moment, the night air seemed to still around her, as though even the cicadas had paused to bear witness. With each soft gasp, Mariah's grief filled the space between them, and Tessa's heart constricted. This was her wife, yet now a stranger cloaked in pain. She hesitated only a second before kneeling down beside her, gentle fingers brushing Mariah's hair back from her tear-streaked face. How much longer do we have to keep going on like this? Tessa asked, voice trembling with both tenderness and exasperation. When will you let me in, to tell me what's happened? Mariah wiped at her cheeks, attempting a brave, brittle smile that cracked almost instantly. There's nothing to tell, Tess, she lied, voice hollow. I'm fine. Tessa's breath hitched as she remembered how they had once shared every secret, late-night confessions over coffee, whispered dreams in the dark. Now Mariah wouldn't even meet her eyes. We used to tell each other everything, Tessa said softly, pressing her hand to Mariah's. There were no secrets between us. But now... You won't even look at me. Tears welled again in Mariah's eyes, but she wrenched them closed as though stifling a memory too painful to acknowledge. Tessa leaned closer, heart aching for the woman she loved. Is it because you want me to trust Ian Ward? She asked, voice careful. The name seemed to shatter something in Mariah's composure, and she looked away, gaze fixed on a distant point beyond the hedges. No, she replied, breath-catching. It's not about him. Tessa's fingers tightened around Mariah's, unwavering. Then why bring him up? Why does seeing him make you withdraw like this? Mariah swallowed hard, voice trembling on the verge of confession. Because when I look at him, I remember everything he did to me, to my mother, and how he murdered Heather Stevens. The words tumbled out, each syllable laden with years of terror, guilt, and unspoken blame. In that instant, the past loomed between them, a shadowed specter threatening to engulf their fragile present. Tessa's chest ached with sorrow and guilt. She'd hoped that by sharing details of her life, her struggles since Heather's death, the nightmares, the hope she had dared to nurture with Mariah, she would build a bridge back to intimacy. Instead, Mariah recoiled, believing that Tessa's openness somehow betrayed the sanctity of her trauma. She drew Mariah into her arms, pressing her cheek to the crown of her wife's head. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I thought sharing my world with you would bring us closer. Mariah shook her head, the tremor in her voice fragile but resolute. This isn't about forgiveness for you, she said softly, twisting out of Tessa's embrace just enough to meet her eyes. This is about me facing the darkness Ian cast over my life. I can't just forgive or forget because you tell me you love me. I have to heal from what he did, on my terms. Her gaze, fierce with pain, softened as it settled on Tessa's. I want to love you. I want to trust you. But first I have to find a way to forgive myself for letting him hurt me so deeply. Tessa nodded, tears sliding freely down her cheeks now, not with pity but with fierce empathy. She reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from Mariah's face. Then let's go together, she said, voice firm. Let me stand by you as you do this, whatever it takes. We'll find a counselor who understands trauma, someone who can guide us both through this darkness into something brighter. You won't do this alone. Mariah looked up, lips trembling into a tentative smile. The weight in her eyes lifted just slightly, as if she could imagine a future where Ian's shadow no longer claimed her. She took a trembling breath and nodded. Okay, she whispered. But you have to promise me you won't push me. I need time. Tessa smiled through her tears, pressing a final kiss to Mariah's forehead. Time is exactly what you have, she promised. And I'll be here for every step of the way, for as long as it takes. Under the lamplight, they sat side by side, hands entwined, two souls bound by grief and hope alike, ready at last to face the ghosts of their past so they could finally build the future they both longed for.